Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news. Big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Our humblest apologies for being a few minutes late. We have had some technical difficulties through this afternoon that just blew up again right before showtime. So hopefully out there in interwebs land, you can, and it might sound a bit different. That might sound a bit rougher, like my mic might sound a bit rougher tonight, but just give us a bit of a thumbs up in the chat that you're hearing us okay, that you're not getting echo. Chewie, you were getting echo before. Are you okay there now? Love, everything going okay?
Check, my check. Yeah, no, we're good.
And Marama, so lovely to see you. You're okay there? It's all sounding okay? I'm not going to touch anything if it is.
No, we're sounding good. It's so lovely to see you both. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was lovely. It was lovely to see up at Waitangi and again here in our little television square as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this. So we look a bit different because, to be honest, whānau, we've been trying to fix stuff this afternoon, me and Jason, and we'd move one thing and then everything would blow up again. And then we'd get it back and we'd move one other thing and everything would blow up again. So I think there's a gremlin in the system. So I'm just going to put my hands behind my back and we're going to have a lovely, lovely conversation with Marama where there's going to be no audio or video played from the background. And then after that, I think something that a lot of you guys have been waiting for since about October of last year when we started this journey off, we have the late breaking news as to what's happening with Budget Day, what's happening with the Lockup and Budget Day, and what's happening with our reporter on the scene, Craig Renney. So I've already spoken to Craig this afternoon. We've got a pre-recorded conversation coming up. Audio gods. And we'll do that after Marama as well. And to be honest, that might be us for tonight because there is some gremlins in the system. And so lovely chat now. Chat with Craig, nighty night. That's pretty much, I think, the show for today. Right. Marama, welcome to the show. Lovely to see you.
Kia ora. Lovely to see you both. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you, man. Hey, let's talk about, did you guys coin it the alternative budget or is it how the media has just described it? But let's talk about it.
We'll take that. It's the green budget. Pretty simple. It's the green budget. And it does absolutely offer a view, an alternative vision to what we've been sold for, decades now. And I'm really proud of it.
Cool. I had a really interesting thought as I was watching the news item, which we're not going to play tonight. Chloe started talking about, you both did all the things: free dental care, free GP visits, public primary health service, free ECE. And she started that list of what you want to do by saying a green government means. And I thought to myself, what does a green government look like? What is a green government?
We want to lead the agenda. We are setting the agenda with this budget and we are being very clear about it. We want to lead the next government and we are putting all of our stuff on the table. We've literally got a plan for how we can have an Aotearoa that can look after people properly, that can look after our living systems, our ecosystem properly. And we're saying to the people, you can choose this. You can choose this. And that would help us to have Greens at the heart, Greens leading the next government. It's up to the people, and that is our point. And we've got a plan, we're putting our cards on the table, and that's what we're offering and getting behind.
So does that mean logistically Greens need to be the biggest left party at the next election?
It's whatever it would mean to help us get this across the line. And, that can look different ways. You've seen this government being sort of led all sorts of paths by its other partners. So our point is it's up to the people to create and choose what the next government looks like. And we are being clear and saying we want to lead the next government.
Okay. So tell us about the ideas: free dental care, free GP visits, primary healthcare sector, and free ECE. Tell me about the plan for all of those wonderful sounding things.
Oh, look, can I start, Pat, by talking about my experiences when I was having treatment for breast cancer? Many other women that I was talking to were not in a privileged position like myself. They had to worry about their jobs and being paid and looking after their rent and their whānau. When someone receives an illness, a diagnosis like cancer, the last thing that people need to worry about is going back to work. And in our case, it was women in between chemotherapy infusions who are feeling their crappiest, whose immunity is at its lowest point. It's actually quite dangerous. And who had to worry about going back to work, who had to worry about continuing to receive an income. Our budget would create an ACC, an Agency for Comprehensive Care, which would bring in, yes, accidents are currently covered if you are in unpaid employment, but not illness, that includes a cancer diagnosis. Why on earth not? We can create a system that pulls all of those health needs into one system and make sure that people with an illness diagnosis are also provided with income support in the same way that we currently do that for accident and injury. And that's one of the other things that was in this budget. So alongside free GP visits, oh my goodness, how many, like we think about ourselves or the people that you know and love or your friends. Far too many people avoid going to the doctor because of cost. So we know this is a thing. Now, on the system, it can cost $50 for a GP system, the cost to the system for a GP visit, $650 if that person who didn't go to the doctor because it was too expensive, maybe it was a sore throat, and then they end up in the emergency department later on down the track because it developed into something worse. $650 is what that cost ends up being to the system. So free GPs isn't just about making sure that people do not have to hesitate to go to the doctor for checkups. Even high blood pressure can develop into diabetes, into, other conditions. So it's about making sure that there's no barriers. And of course, yes, we need to train up more GPs. Yes, and we've accounted for that in our plan in a way that successive governments have not. So we've said that the current Otago and Auckland medical schools can maximise their placements for an extra 200 placements a year. And we've accounted for that in our funding. So these are the sorts of things that we have included in our budget. Free ECE, Pat. We've had a system here that recently has seen the majority of ECE centres be privately run, and often big, large international corporates who are using our tamariki as business units, as big business units, make a profit off government subsidies, many millions to just one organisation, $20 million a year to the Right Foundation, off government subsidies, off our money for their private pocket. We want to bring ECE into a publicly funded system, which would, because that acknowledges that early childhood education is a common good, is a public good. And we would pay teachers directly. Government would fund that and lift those admin costs and burden and salary costs off any centre that wanted to opt in to the public system, but no more government funding to private centres who want to stay as a profit-driven private centre. These things just make sense to me. There's so much more, like people in rural communities who currently do not have access to ordinary GP checkups or visits. It might be 2 hours from Ruatoria, where my mum lives, to Gisborne. We would send mobile health vans into rural and isolated communities that are diagnostic, that can diagnose, that can again prevent. making sure that everyone has a livable income. Like we could actually, alongside building more public houses, which is also in our policy, we can actually end poverty, Pat. And what is an ambition for our country if not that? Knowing that we have all the resources that we need, there is enough for us to end poverty, to build public housing, to make free GP visits, to make sure ECE is free, to put more into public transport. We just have to redistribute wealth. We have to stop the system that has been propping up the super wealthy for so long, leaving the rest of the vast majority to scrap over the crumbs. We're done with that, and the Greens have put out a plan of how we can do all of this stuff.
I like that you answer all the questions before I ask them. Like, where
How dare you?
are all the new doctors going to come from and stuff? It's perfect. But you're talking about not putting public money into private childcare. And I think Chewie will attest to this, learned a lesson from Dr. Gary Pienda from Northland, because the government made an announcement of $50 million going to private surgeries to bring down the waiting list. And we kind of went, oh yeah, well we can get behind that. That doesn't sound too bad. And then Gary came on and said, yeah, but if we took that $50 million and put it into the public sector, we'd get those queues down anyway. Exactly. And we'd have more nurses to do future operations as well. And so because we're just a couple of rodeo clowns in Dunedin, we need to be educated. And when you say no more money into the public sector, it does make me go, the money going into the private sector, the money going into the private sector could probably solve the shortfalls elsewhere in the public sector. But then if you want to send your little princess still to your blazer wearing daycare, you still can if you've got the money for it.
Yes,
so that's what you're saying? Yeah.
That is exactly what I'm saying. We suspect, though, that most centres, even private ones, because you've also got owner-operated ones, they might be a single centre. We suspect that actually the provision by the government of paying your teachers a proper salary, lifting the admin burden off the centre, making sure that your workers also have wraparound support, which, the teaching conditions for your teachers are the learning conditions for your tamariki. We suspect that will be an attractive option to many providers. And so they would have the support also of ECE networks like kindergarten, for example, to help transition private centres into a public model. And this is, again, the main thing here is valuing early childhood education as a public good and stop treating children as big economic business, big money to be made. And just like with schools are public good, so should ECE be.
Chewie, questions and comments for Marama?
Yes, I have a question from the stuff comment section. Why can't the Greens just focus on the environment and nothing else? Just stay in your box. That's where I put you. I'm going to ignore the fact that the last election, you guys seem to be the only party that had a fully costed budget in the first place. Just hug a tree. Just hug a tree.
Hey, I love hugging trees. I love this question. How can we expect people to care about climate change when they have not enough money for kai? How can we expect people to care about the rivers when they do not have a home and a roof over their head? But in actual fact, I also want to acknowledge that many people who are struggling absolutely do also understand that everything is connected, and to resolve and to reduce our emissions, to protect our living systems, to move away from profit motives, and to make sure everyone has what they need to live good lives. They are all connected, and they are all driven by the same economic system that seeks to exploit people and the environment for the wealth of the few. And so when those comments can often come from people who just don't want us to focus on social justice issues. And the funniest thing is, we have always been a party that understands We've always cared about social justice and the link with environmental justice and the link with climate justice. The Green Party has proudly connected those dots from the start. We cannot be environmentalists without being social justice warriors, and we're really proud of that.
It's almost like none of these things sit in their own individual box and don't affect the thing in the next box. I also want to say, and I have been saying this afternoon as I've used my thank you chat, my super clicky keyboard to engage with some of these people and go, tell me when the Greens only focused on the environment, when they didn't have an opinion on workers' rights or social justice or gender equality or all of these things, because they are a real grown-up looking very capable of governing at this point political party. It's crazy.
Yeah, I guess look, we can't blame people for thinking that the word green only means nature. So I get that. We've also been exposed to, again, 4+ decades of that, that neoliberal conversation, whatever you want to call it, where we have looked at things in isolation. This has led to the very problems we're talking about today. So I get that there's that thought out there, and I'm always really happy to have those discussions and say this, and sometimes when people see the Green Party caring about te tiriti, for example, they're like, oh, what? No, we just want you to plant trees while we continue to pollute the earth. We'll just plant some trees. So, yeah, I love those questions. I love when we get the opportunity to talk about the Green Party, connecting all the dots. All of it is connected, and we want to address at its core the economic system, which tramples over people and the planet, because we care about both.
My second question from the stuff comment section: are you paying for this with the hard-earned wages of the average New Zealand worker? You're coming for all of us, right? This is the only way that this works.
It is the current economic system which has taxed people who earn instead of people who own. The Greens want to turn that around. So for our workers, actually, we are good news for you. We instead want to tax wealth. And for far too long, our economic system has pumped up people who already have more than what they need, and has instead penalized people, ordinary people, who are scrambling for crumbs. When you have got an economic system where only 311 households in Aotearoa own more wealth than the 2.5 million rest of people, then that is the economic system that working people have been made to suffer. That is the economic system that has kept wages low. That is the economic system which has seen people who earn an income pay more of the rate of tax than people on the highest incomes and who hoard wealth. So we are good news for workers. We're also for workers making sure that your ECE is free, making sure that your public transport is affordable, making sure that your GP visits are free, making sure that your dental care is free. So the benefits are going to go to workers as well. And we are actually taking more wealth from the highest top wealthy people that we should have always been taking wealth from.
How do you feel about your partners on the left? I mean, especially coming up to election time, there has been a history of, let's not point the finger at any one group, but certainly comrades on the left sort of occasionally pointing at one another and saying, we will do it better than them, or they'll do it better than us, or whatever it is. When I was watching the news item tonight and I watched Chippy basically say, well, go talk to the Greens about it. Go talk to the Greens about it. Have you guys had any conversations like between you leadership to say, how are we going to do this so we can really fight for our own slice of the pie without shitting on the other group? Or if you haven't, how do you do that?
I mean, no one was probably surprised by what we put out today. We did give Labor a heads up. I think it's fair for people, for the public, to understand that we actually do have a good working relationship with both Labor and Te Pāti Māori. We've proven that for several terms now, and in Parliament, several different terms. We have shown for many, many years that we've been able to work together and achieve good things. Yep, absolutely. But what
sorry to interrupt, Marama, but just as evidence of that, the highlights of the last election cycle during the debates were you and Debbie Ngarewa-Packer in the debates talking to Winston Peters. So it's obvious the chemistry is there.
Yeah, and we've got plenty of, we're on record, we've got plenty of examples of where we have achieved things together and worked together and have a good working relationship. But Pat, we are less concerned about what other political parties feel about what we are doing, and our focus is instead on working with communities and people. That's where the real power is. We know this is hard. We know, we know this wasn't going to be picked up by all the political parties and they're going to be kissing it and all of that. We know that. We know this is hard. It relies on building and developing people, the power of people and the relationships across communities who can realize, wow, actually, when we work together for change and for good things, we can actually have good things as well. That's what we're more focused on rather than trying to convince political parties.
Yeah. All right. Chewie, I sent you a couple of emails. Did you get those?
I do.
Yeah, because
yes.
Because what we've just realised, Marta, what I've just realised is that it was my end that was having the tech issue problems. So Chewie will be able to play a couple of clips from the other side. And if you've got those set up, Chewie, if you wanted to play the one that was called Ministers on the Green Budget, let's see how some of the leaders of the other parties responded to your announcement, and then get you to respond to that, Marama.
Absolute circus. Look, this is just left-wing Trumpism.
I've got the manifesto by Marx and Marama Engels. Here it is here. And if you look at page 2, you'll see what it's all about. Show that?
That's all. It's a very quick one. Obviously, even up to and including the Reds under the bed came out in that literal thing.
Commies in the woodpile. Get my gun. Where's my gun?
We often hear about, especially in American debates, when America was at its strongest, they had a 90% top tax rate back in the 50s. What do you say? I mean, like, do you still try and educate these people on what you guys are doing, or is that vote a lost vote and you really just got to spend your time engaging and firing up your base to be engaged?
No one's a lost cause, I reckon, because I know for a fact that people in communities, New Zealanders, care about everyone having a home. I know that New Zealanders understand what fairness is. I know that New Zealanders can look at the picture and say, hey, why am I working my ass off really hard and I still can't make ends meet? And we've got people sitting on 20 plus houses. Is that right? No, it's not. So it's actually just about being brave, not even brave, just clear and staunch on what we value. Greens will not back down. It was funny in the House today. You had Chris Bishop in his speech, I think it was general debate, and he's standing up in the House and going, and the Greens want to tax the rich. And we're like, yeah. And the Greens want to make sure everyone has a livable income. And we're like, yeah, like, I don't know if you understand, you're not insulting us. And so what is most important here? As I said, ministers of the government, they'll say what they want to say. What we know is that people in our country do understand and do value looking after each other. We've shown that in times of crisis, what happens? Our people come together and take care of one another. We know that people value our beautiful living systems, our beautiful native species, the world around us. We know that people want to make sure we're looking after our children. We know that people value early childhood education. We know this. I know that ministers and other political parties will say what they need to hold on to their power.
Mhm.
We are appealing to the people to say, look, we've worked really hard on a plan. We've had it costed. We know this is possible. This is within our reach. Another world is absolutely possible, and we've got a way to do it. We have confidence in what we're standing up for.
I think we'd all agree that if you look to America, I don't want to talk about America tonight, but there's an example of Americans who vote for the right, who vote against their own self-interest.
Absolutely.
You know, like poor,
Absolutely.
poor white workers in America who vote against their own self-interest.
It happens everywhere and here as well.
I was gonna say, do you see that in New Zealand? Who is the voter on the right who's voting against their own self-interest? What's the psychographic person look like, and how do you reach them?
I guess I understand that, again, at least for decades now, there has been a successful narrative from the right, an economic narrative that says, oh, government spending bad, government debt bad. What we can do and what we have to do is highlight the real life impacts that economic way of thinking has had on our communities. I just had a train of thought and then I lost it. But I think it's basically like when you slash public services, our schools, our hospitals, our healthcare, all of those public services that we all rely on, who does it impact on the most? People with the least power and resource. We want to make sure that we invest in strong public services. This is actually what will build a country that can be safe and resilient for the challenges of now and the future. We can talk to people about why it's just a really good thing for everyone to have livable incomes. We can talk to people, and actually people can talk to us about the intergenerational benefit of having a good home, how that ends up benefiting you, your children, and your mokopuna. Actually, people know this stuff. People know this stuff, including people in the most struggling communities. I think our work is just to unlock the power of people's own stories in their own communities and uphold their own voices. It's not the politicians as talking heads who can change that narrative around, actually. It is the people in those very communities, those stories, who can say, hey, actually, when my whānau member got sick, we found it really hard. An extra bit of livable income or support in the healthcare system would have made a massive difference to us directly. You know, this actually is a good thing. So it's using the voices of the people rather than just depending on politicians.
I think what we're seeing from this government as well is they are firing up bases to oppose them, whether it's Māori, particularly last year, whether it's women this year, you know, whether it's ex-smokers, whether it's people who use the ferry a lot, whatever it is, they seem to be creating more enemies than anything. So it's going to be an interesting run into the election over the next, well, let's be honest, what is it going to be, 14 months? Probably all we're talking about.
At the most. Like, you know, yeah. But also, Pat, the point that you're raising is an important one. I'm really proud of appealing to the best of us rather than appealing to the worst of us, which is clearly what other parties have no qualms about doing. Fancy having a strategy of power that relies on you racking up the ugly in us. Fancy that. I'm really proud of us appealing to the best of our values, appealing to compassion, appealing to kindness, appealing to common sense, appealing to the politics of care rather than the politics of division. I'm really proud of us. We'll keep doing that with all of our throats.
I guess it's because you've mentioned the best of us. You talked about kind of, what was Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high sort of thing. There's a little bit of talk in the House today about a particular journalist going low. It seems to me to be a bit of a debate that always happens, which is they're they're showing their offence for a word rather than their offence for 500,000 women who have had their money ripped away from them. It does feel a little bit pearl clutchy, but actually, Chewie, do you want to play that, the longer one of those two other clips? It's only about 20 seconds, which is Brooke Van Velden in the House today being very stampy about being a strong woman. I'm a strong woman after two men allowed.
Trying to jump in.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Chewie?
Yes, I have managed to work that out by using my context clues. Thank you.
Strong woman. Play strong woman.
It was hard to find a single sentence in Andrea Vance's article I agree with.
That would be enough of an answer. Another supplementary?
Mr. Speaker,
Irony.
Secretary Brownlee tried to contain the controversy.
I was not given the opportunity to answer the second part of that question.
With respect, I ruled that you did.
David Seymour jumping in.
The best thing that can happen right now, instead of everyone else interrupting, she should be given a full opportunity to respond the way she wants to.
Well, thank you for your view. I don't agree with you.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a strong woman and I can speak for myself.
Absolutely.
That's good. And you only get to do that.
When she sees misogynistic terms of abuse used against women, she should stand against it.
And there's nothing wrong with treating people as humans.
Not one of them have stood up and condemned the disgusting use of the C word from a disgusting journalist last week.
Chewie made the point when we talked about this a couple of nights ago, and it's fair. Chewie was right that the unfortunate thing about the use of the C word by Andrea Vance is they will use it to deflect, and they're trying that. But there is a very strange irony that the National MPs are very upset that not one woman from the other side stood up to condemn the use of the C word, where I'm sure on your side of the house, Marama, you're going, why is not one woman from that side standing up for the billions of dollars that the government's ripped out of equal pay cases? But I'd love your response about this whole...
Yeah, I'm really keen to talk about this because I have famously been slurred with that same word in quite a public way as well. Look, I'll start by saying, of course, it is never good enough to stand by where there is misogynistic abuse and insult at any woman. Absolutely. But what we need to be what we need to be clear about here is you are talking about women in power with ministerial power to make decisions and to choose to make change. Whenever we are talking about who are victims here, we have to have a critical analysis of who holds power and who does not. And so all of these, often lowest paid women workers who do not have the power, the ministerial powers of these ministers, of these female ministers, need to be centered in who is really the victim. The women who, unlike all of us members of parliament, and especially ministers who are paid even more, the women who these decisions have a real harmful impact on their everyday life, an actual real harmful impact. And for ministers to make themselves victims and distract away from the real harm that is happening to women, we've just got to question that. And the final point I want to make on that is it also does distract from the fact that we have a prime minister who actually needs to bear the largest responsibility for the assaults against women workers. And so, yes, there is also a bit of maybe unfair focus also on female ministers, because you have a prime minister who, at the end of the day, that's where the buck should stop.
Can you just unpack that a bit when you say the responsibility, just for those of us who aren't maybe quite as quick as Chewie? Unpack that a bit. When you say his ultimate responsibility, are you just saying because he opened the door for ACT to come through, or just unpack that a little bit?
Oh, he's the prime minister. He is in charge.
Right.
It's literally in the name. He is the prime minister. The responsibility for his government's actions stop with him. And so, we also need to put the focus back on the prime minister.
Yeah. Do you think there's a lot of people, of course, going, but you guys got so up in arms when people said stuff to Jacinda from the outside looking in, it seemed to be now they're comparing a torrent of dangerous and violent abuse thrown at a female prime minister versus one female columnist saying one thing. It doesn't feel like it's the same to me. What about you?
Yeah, and the comparisons, of course, are not the same and not the same situations. Again, I never want to minimize misogynistic abuse at any women. I never want to do that. But what I will always do is center and have a critical analysis about who holds power in any debate, in any discussion. And that's what I will continue to do.
Yeah. Chewie, anything else you want to add in?
Yeah, look, I knew it was going to go this way when that word was used. But like the government is treating this as if an opposition MP said it rather than a private citizen, a journalist.
No, that did seem weird. That seemed really weird watching the news tonight with national MPs getting up and going, but Andrea Vance, and you're like, but she's not over. What? She's not over there. It should be the phone call.
She wrote an opinion piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very clear that I think it was a dumb move. Okay, I get the feeling. I think it's earned, but I don't think she should have done it because it has given the ball to the government to go, oh, they're using rude words about us now.
And I think that's why the rest of us have a responsibility. You know, it is a distraction, yes, and it's even, you know, you've got the two Chris's fighting over this. It is a distraction away from the real harm that has been caused to women who, this is not an academic exercise. They are literally struggling to pay the rent, the mortgage, plus power, plus healthy kai, and then bugger it if anything else comes and swipes them from the sidelines. Any other bill, a broken down car, a health cost, anything at all. We need to keep the focus on them, on the lowest paid workers, on the fact that the value of their work has been undermined, on the fact that that also then undermines the value of them and they're taking care of their families and communities. That's where the conversation needs to come back to, that they have been completely and utterly undermined by this government. They are the real victims here.
Maybe to wrap up, if you're okay, Marama, there's lots of chats in there that we're not going to get a chance to get to all of them right now, but there are some that are direct questions to you. If we can throw 2 or 3 of these at you, then we'll say night for the night. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so Tiffany says, Marama, do you honestly believe asking nicely of a violent colonial capitalist system will ever work? Or is there a point where revolution starts? And I would add to it, and if there is, what does it look like? What does revolution look like?
Also, just to be clear, I'm not asking nicely of the capital system. I am encouraging the power of the people. I'm doing precisely the opposite. Yeah. I'm saying that it is the people who have the power, not a capitalist system at all. That's where, and so in actual fact, I'm doing quite the opposite. My faith is not with the system. My faith is with the people. My faith is with the people and their stories and their courage for change and their solutions, because that's where we got our work from the people, from teachers and families who are living in poverty and disabled people and Māori communities and so on and so forth. So that's where I want to be clear. We're not asking the government or political parties nicely anything. I'm not even focused on what they think, if you haven't picked that up. What we are doing, though, is highlighting that we have to take action in building power and forming relationships across communities and finding that common ground for things we all agree on and know is the right thing to do. And that is the power of the people. That is not the power of a capitalist system.
The name is Robot Fi, probably fail. It's FAI1. Thankful to have you back, Marama. What do you say to the people who like universalism but are unreasonably worried about free riders? From Robot Fail.
Yeah. Well, healthcare is a human right. I don't think anyone should have to pay for it, to be quite frank. And I'll stand on that. So healthcare, talking about healthcare as a human right, as a public common good, but then remember our budget also includes ways to make sure that those who can afford to pay more tax are paying more tax. So we redistribute the burden and the wealth in other roundabout ways as well. And being unfairly it's not free riders that we have to worry about. It's tax avoidance in the big wealthy areas and communities and people on high wealth. That's what we've always should have been directing our attention to. I'm not quite sure. I probably need a definition of what one means by free rider. Yeah. But when we have, so superannuation, for example, universality works to make sure that we are picking up the common good, to make sure that we are taking care of people. And then we have other ways of targeting. So our health part of the budget includes immediate increase in what's called capitation funding, health funding to Māori and Pacific communities, because it is clear that there are inequities there. So, yep, we want everyone to receive free GPs as a human right, but we also have ways to specifically target where there has been extra need that has been neglected.
Two more. One's just a comment, but I thought everyone would like to hear this. Kiwi Birds outed themselves. I went from ACT to the Greens. People can change. There you go.
Oh, thank you. That's a heartwarming story. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Last question. Yeah, this is an interesting one, actually. Somosaurus says, Marama, I'm still arguing with people about your straight white men comment during the Parker Posey protest. What should I say to push back on it?
Yeah, me too. I still get that from time to time. And don't feel like you have to push back on it too much. You may not be able to convince people. And I always say to people, if you're just having a real hard time on one point, then let it go, and try and just pivot instead to the good things that we're offering. I also put a Facebook post up myself, and I've really encouraged to help walk through the situation and to be clear about what I actually meant, which was about the gendered nature of violence. And so feel free to, you can Google Marama Facebook. There's some search terms that'll help you bring it up, and feel free to direct people to that so that I have to explain it and not you. But it's about pivoting the conversation back to, but actually look at the good work that the Greens are doing. Look at the inspiring vision where we can look after each other and our planet. That's what people can also bring the conversation back to.
Can I offer one thing as well? Because when people are doing that, they're doing that well-known thing, whataboutism.
Yeah,
I've recently started saying to people who do that to me, I go, whatever it's about. Let's say it's about the C word thing. Just in it, I go, when you can identify for me how your point changes the point I'm making or answers the point I'm making rather than just distracts from it, then I'll engage with you. But for now, this is my question. So basically going, you're not answering my question. Your whataboutism, fine, but that doesn't take away from my question. So how about we don't use the whataboutism as a defense, answer my question, and then we'll deal with your whataboutism, because that's what it is. It's like when your whataboutism, when you can demonstrate to me that your whataboutism either adds to or takes away from my point, then we'll engage with it until that answers my point. That's sort of what I started doing.
Yeah, and look, I just want to acknowledge that it's up to everyone is in a different place when it comes to how much energy they have got to engage in bad faith conversations, or whether people just want to protect their energy for genuine inquirers is a really good space for people to engage in. You will have people who maybe disagree with us, but are genuine inquirers and are asking, wait, why? Yeah. Those are good conversations to have. With bad faith conversations that you're never going to get their agreement. People should feel free to not have to use their energy, but I know that there are some people who like that job. It's not me.
It's me.
Yeah,
that's
I'm ready to go to war.
Yeah, totally.
That's the classic response is, okay, if we're going to have a conversation, are you prepared to change your mind? And if they say no, I go, well, I'm not looking for an argument. Thanks
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
but we'll move on. Whereas Chewie would say,
I'm here for the argument. Where do you park your private jet, and why is that a concern that they're going to be taxed now? Oh, you don't?
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that we're coming for your private jets.
I'm ready for that one. Hey, look, I just want to say, as a straight white man, when you said that comment and everybody got all twisted up about it, I was just like, why? Why are they all it just seemed like a gimme, and I certainly didn't take it personally because I'm not responsible for all gendered violence. But people were like, but I'm a man. Like, I don't understand. Like, it was such a straight line comment. I am to this day baffled about I can understand people that willfully twisted it. I am still baffled by people that don't get it.
I had women, particularly Pākehā women, coming up to me, and actually not just women, men as well, including Pākehā men, coming up to me in airports, sort of whispering, going, I'm so glad someone finally said it. Women who particularly had felt invisibilized and unseen in their own experiences of violence. So I acknowledge that everyone has different reactions, but I think there was the point that I was definitely wanting to make is the focus on trans people was an absolute distraction away from the real drivers of gendered violence. And I will stand by that forever.
And also not just gendered violence, but everything. Like, so those lists coming about the Christian leaders that have been pedophiles, and it's this long. And then on the other column, it's like rainbow story time, people that have been pedophiles, and there's no one on the list. It's like, it's just on and on and on. Hey, Marama, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm so glad it came on board, and I'm so glad I didn't touch any buttons and make the whole system blow up. So that's good as well. And we're excited to have you back in the fold. I know we told you that in February. Have the Greens had their kind of retreat weekend yet this year, or
we've had one. We've got another one coming up, and those are just really important times for us. You can imagine the treadmill at Parliament is what it is, and sometimes we're all at Parliament together for a week, but we hardly see each other. So those are really important times for us to come together and chill and just reconnect with each other again as well.
Excellent. Hey, well, thanks for coming and saying good day tonight. And we look forward to talking to you more and more up until the next election. And well done on the release today. It's always good. We've talked a few times about it. Feels like the Greens often are the adults in the room. Like Chloe will say, well, the research says, whereas we've always talked about the difference between like the research data and anecdotal stories. As often anecdotal stories or anecdotal evidence can be quite hard feeling, and like you can be quite emotive about it. Research can be a bit cold and a bit raw, but it's more accurate, and you guys are great at being able to go, I get it, but let's have a look at the solution. So it's cool. Keep going, man. It's great.
Hey, I've really enjoyed the conversation tonight, but also the questions and the comments from people. I never back away from the conversation. That's what we need to be doing, having these conversations. Thank you both so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I do. We'll talk soon.
Pleasure.
Kia ora.
Yes.
Let's go through these super chats now, because then we'll get to the Craig Renney conversation, shall we? Kiwi Bird again. We salute comrades Chloe Marks and Marama Engels. Yeah, it's funny, when people think of it, there's a downside. Like I've been wanting to Google all night. I've had to sit on my hands. But there was one by the ACT Party tonight talking about like a social media about living in fairyland, and the picture was fantastic. There was pink fluffy clouds and a rainbow and a unicorn. I'm just like, I want to live in that world too, if that's what they represent. It's just like you don't get that you're actually not talking them down, Do
you know what I love about that? That when anybody brings up Marx or fucking communism or anything like that, just ask them, have you read the Communist Manifesto?
Yeah. What does it mean?
Like, honestly, it's a pamphlet.
Yeah.
It's not a book. You're not reading the Bible. It is literally a pamphlet. And I defy anyone to read it and not see what it's saying. I think Winston Peters, with his little putting up the Soviet flag up there, still thinks the Cold War's on.
Yeah, he was there, wasn't he? He's always
there. He was there. He personally met Stalin at the pub once. I don't know.
And he was already 50 when he was there. Kaimatara says, Marama, a good way to counter the propaganda calling your budget unrealistic is to mention how New Zealand had these things for about 40 years until neoliberalism.
It's
in the
not
ballot.
unrealistic.
Better to be late than dead on time. That's what he did there. Peter says, we've had neoliberalism for 40 years. Time for something else. Yep.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah, let's just get rid of it. Kristen Stanaland, very refreshing to see Greens acting like a potential leading party. That was interesting. Right. A green, what was the word? A green government means. So that was it. And they're right. They're not talking about having to be the biggest, because look, how much has Act in New Zealand First kind of driven this government? So it's probably more of an intentional comment than a result-based comment.
That's just prompted the question I should have, behind the curtain chat. This is what happens. You get a guest on, the guest has lovely time, we ask a lot of questions, the guest leaves, I think of a great question.
Tell us, we'll pretend. Let's let Marama's still here.
What have the Greens learned about being a minor party in government when you look at what New Zealand First and ACT have achieved?
There you go. Now write it down, and when Marama comes back, we'll go for it.
Yep.
Martha said, it's funny how Winston called it Marxist. Oh yes, it's Marxism. Winston structured after Marx books, The Capitalist Welfare State Manifesto. Exceldia says, assuming it's a coalition, what's your top non-negotiables? What would you fight your coalition partners on? Sorry, Exceldia, we didn't get to your message. There was a lot of messages flying through here. I apologize about that. Tiffany says, fantastic words and ideas. It's a shame they are. That's all they are. The rich aren't going to give up their resource willingly. They need to bleed for it, not beg. Tiffany, yeah. Late fee. Tane says, late fee. Sorry, Joe, yep.
So the dynamic with Marama and Chloe,
yep.
I'll tell you how I see that.
Okay.
I see Marama just gently guiding us in the direction that we all need to go. And then she'll hand me off to Chloe, who will give me a speech that will have me running head first through brick walls to change things. I saw her speech today talking about this green budget, and I could hear the horns of battle in the distance. I was ready to go in a direction as fast as I could. That combination is weapons grade.
Yeah.
I love that dynamic.
Yeah. Tiffany again. How many years does it take for change to come? If you say please. If you say please. Oh, if you say please. I'll let you know when it works, because so far for Māori it's been 200 years. Yeah, I don't know. I think Tiffany's actually sent us another one that's basically didn't like the response. But yeah, I don't think. Watching them, I wonder if it's a little bit like, how you talk about people being a smiling assassin. Marama comes across as very nice, lovely, softly spoken. But I do get the sense of the smiling assassin. It's like there are some unwavering bits within that psyche.
Here's my headcanon of how it could work, right?
Yep.
She's just in the kitchen making cups of tea for everyone. Fantastic, lovely, homely, and very encouraging. And she's just stirring the tea bags. Do you know that 312 families control all of this, and they don't pay their fair share of taxes like we do? Hands out the cups of tea. I know where they live. Chloe's starting up the bus out the front. Shall we go?
Cal says, loved you guys trolling the coalition of chaos with the name change.
That was
Brooke Van Velden and Willis are busy centering themselves in a pay equity conversation. So we de-center the 180,000 workers actually impacted. I heard, was it even Craig who said more like 500,000 if you go right the way to the tail of the thing. And I think he said, maybe this was off the show, but one of the mistakes the government's made is they've pissed off 500,000 people like that. It's not like that, like instantaneously, and that's what they're feeling. Sorry we didn't get to your comment there, Peter. I'd love to hear Marama's thoughts on the suspension from Parliament of Debbie, 21 days, Rawiri, 21 days, and Hana, 7 days. And finally, thank you, Marama, mad respect, kia kaha from Icy Monster. Icy Monster.
Shall we talk about this a little bit before we hit Craig's bit?
Yeah, the interview is a good 20 minutes, so we need to get into it. But you go for it. Go for it, love.
So I'm just going to touch on this because there's obviously going to be more to come about it tomorrow. But I just wanted to give a little bit of context for this. So Rawiri and Debbie are suspended from Parliament for 21 days. Hannah is suspended for 7. Do you know how long the longest suspension for an MP was before these guys?
Well, because you're saying that, it's not going to be very many, so I'll say 4 days.
3.
So
and just to put that in the context of how hard that they have come down to, as we've been mentioning, it's not about the haka. Lots of commentators are talking about this, saying that they were kicked out for doing a haka. They were kicked. They have received this punishment. And they've been kicked out for getting out of their seats.
Yep.
That has apparently brought our whole democracy to its crumbling knees, and an example needs to be made. I think this is fucking ridiculous. Clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. We might try and get someone on. We'll see if we can do that. All right. We're gonna now let's give you a little bit of an update. Fine. I don't know if this is gonna work, but I've already thought of a workaround, Chewie, because this is already on YouTube. It is unlisted. So if it doesn't work from my end, I'll send you the link and then you can play it off YouTube from your end. You can't see it yet, it's unlisted, but it's already up. So basically, as soon as we finish the show, I'll make it live on YouTube. So welcome, whānau. Story time with Pat. It was September, October last year. There was the half-yearly fiscal update, haifu, and a friend of the show, Craig Renney, got turned away from attending, and he got turned away because he was told that they only allow accredited media outlets to put people in there. Now, this hasn't been made particularly public, but I understand that Matthew Hooton attended the Haiufu, and he attended the Haiufu, I believe, because he writes a column for Metro magazine. Now, there are lots of people in the world who are media, but they do something else in their day job. So we spent end of last year talking about it. Did we want to get accredited by the Media Council? It comes with pros and cons. It means we are a little bit more accountable. Like when you're not accredited, basically someone complains, you're like, well, stick it up your bum. Whereas now there's a place to complain. We don't really worry about that, but it's a little bit less cowboyish. And it'll be Chewie. Chewie will be held responsible for something at some stage. Not me. It'll be Chewie. But what it does come with, the benefits it comes with, is you then get access to things like the budget lockup. So we got accreditation a couple of months ago. We decided we'd apply to get there. And they said, yep, you guys can come to the lockup. That's probably all I need to say, because we now have an interview with Craig Renney that I recorded with him this afternoon. Let me check if I've heard from Treasury yet, because at 5 o'clock this afternoon I hadn't. Nope, still haven't. And for the eager keen bean, I'm going to do this and try and get it real quick because it starts to play straight away. So that'll help us know if it works. And go up. They're all correct. All those totals are pause. There we go. Sounds like it's going to work. Did you hear me? Did you hear the little dulcet tones there, Chewie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See the little I accidentally started recording in the locked out room. You see that? It's locked out. So we start in the locked out set and then we move into the VHN set. And this is a conversation around Craig being locked out of Haifu, the CTU being locked out of budget, and then what's happening with BHN. So let's go to the conversation that I had this afternoon with Craig, and you will get all the lowdown and all the update as to what's going on. All right, welcome to the show, the lovely Craig Renney, reporter, broadcaster, journalist, Craig Renney. They're all correct, eh? All those titles are correct, eh, Craig? Craig Renney?
I would include the term Renaissance man, but yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's have a chat about budget lockup. let's have a chat about what happened in Haifu, which was towards the end of last year. And you were what appeared to be controversially kept out of Haifu, the half-yearly update, whatever it stands for officially. And there, my understanding is there had been no other economic lockups that you'd ever been kept out of, denied from. That was like the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it's ever really been told, but I heard Jordan Williams talking a bit about the story behind why the Taxpayers Union aren't able to attend that lockup. So why don't you give us a heads up as to, should we say why you think you're kept out, or do you know this for sure as to why you're kept out?
Let me tell you what I know.
Yeah, cool.
So at the half-year economic and fiscal updates, which happens in December, that's a lockup held by the Treasury to give us early access to the government books. They do this every 6 months. In December, they do the half-year, and in May, they do the full budget. The CTU, as we do every time there is an economic lockup, had applied for a seat at that lockup in order to be able to get access to the books so that we can then interpret that information for our more than 300,000 members. That has never in the past been a problem. That has always just been something, it's just been an automatic tick. And a range of organizations attend. So there's banks, there are financial institutions, there's a whole range of journalists. And then there are other NGO organizations like ourselves who attend these things. So at the half-year economic and fiscal update, it's a smaller crowd because it's more technical. But at the budget, you find people like the Salvation Army. You find people like the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, the senior doctors' trade unions, the Public Service Association, as well as the New Zealand Initiative, the Taxpayers Union, a whole people from a range of organizations. And that's been a long-standing thing. We've had David Farrar representing Kiwi blog in Labour Party lockups. So this hasn't been a political issue in the past. In December last year, the Treasury informed me that it had made a decision that it would no longer allow the CTU access to the half-year lockup. It also, at the same time, barred the Taxpayers Union, Business New Zealand, and the New Zealand Initiative on the grounds that we no longer needed access to that information. Financial institutions, big Australian banks, they needed access to that information, but we did not. And so as a consequence, we couldn't get into that lockup. The lockups are important, not just for giving us access to information. They also help us have conversations with journalists, help us answer their questions in the lockup so that we're setting the media narrative and the media tone for the reporting that comes out of that lockup. So this is the first time in living memory that had ever happened in December. We discovered this week that they have also repeated this now for the budget, and they've locked out a wide range of institutions as well.
Let's go back as well to Haifu, because they gave you a reason as to why this common occurrence of, they call them third-party groups, but, you know, entities that aren't direct media, aren't the groups that speak directly to the people, but they're intermediary groups who speak to the media, who speak to people. And let's bring up an email that they told you about. Let me read out to the people exactly what it says as to their new rationale. It says this. Of you attending, or of people attending the lockups. To meet that purpose, the Treasury will continue to accept applications from journalists representing organisations who are registered with the Parliamentary Press Gallery or the New Zealand Media Council. Using these external criteria, meaning those two groups, ensures the Treasury is not making subjective decisions about who is or is not a journalist. We'll get to the rest of that in a minute, but what you haven't explained, I don't think yet, or maybe I've missed it, is exactly why you were kept out of lockup, because there are some rumours going around that it might have been a bit more personal.
It may be. Again, certainly the OIA chain that was produced later by Thomas Coughlan, the journalist at the NZ Herald, suggested that the request for me not to attend that came from the Minister of Finance's office directly, rather than coming from the Treasury itself.
And that was repeated. So that story was repeated today by Jordan Williams talking to Sean Plunkett around why the taxpayers union is getting blocked. Basically hinting at, and I'll say this in case this is the idea, basically hinting at, because Nicola Willis doesn't want you specifically there, the only way they can do that is to put a criteria in that eliminates you, but that then catches up a whole bunch of other groups. Now, whether that's 100% right or there's nuance to it, that's the general vibe that's out there. Is that fair?
Certainly, that's the impression around Wellington, right, is that they don't want that kind of informed analysis in the lockup, informing the other journalists in the lockup about what's in and what's out. They don't want those sorts of questions, and as a consequence, they've chucked me out, and they've chucked out a range of other people as well as a consequence. Because if they chuck me out, they've got to chuck lots of people out.
So talk about Budget Day 2025 now. What has Treasury told you and the CTU about attending? So
they've just told us very simply that you're no longer, you're again barred from the restricted lockup. The CTU is barred. The criteria are now only that journalists and financial institutions can access this documents, because there's no longer a need for your members or your the people you represent to have early access to that information. So they've repeated that again. And when you say journalists with the air quotes, that's actually correct, because as we know from the Treasury, from the email that we've just read, the external criteria of being a part of the New Zealand Media Council or the Parliamentary Press Gallery means that Treasury is not deciding what is and isn't a journalist. And we can also infer things like, we all remember when Cameron Slater went to court, I think it was to not reveal some of his sources because he claimed to be a journalist, and they tested that in court. But then he also won a journalist award for the best blog or whatever it was. So so in this day and age, even though, for example, I don't call myself a journalist, I'll be a commentator or a reporter or whatever, but in this day and age, basically what they're saying is anyone acting as a journalist can be considered a journalist. Fair? Fair, as long as they're inside an organization which is inside those two accredited bodies, the Press Gallery or the Media Council. I think that's fair for what we're talking about now. I guess my comment about anyone, that's more of a broader within society. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Okay, so this is where I'll take over the story that we're telling, this fabulous bedtime story. We heard about this last year, and we thought, oh, there's going to be some swings and roundabouts, pros and cons of being part of the New Zealand Media Council. So whilst most independent media doesn't want a kind of bar of it because it kind of commits a place to be that if people want to complain about you, they can, etc., etc. We actually thought, oh, maybe we should do it. So across summer, we thought about it. The start of this year, we talked about it. I applied to be a part of the Media Council to see if they thought what we do. Now, this is not just BHN, but this is the whole company, which is now multiple podcasts and broadcast spaces, would be warranting from their side of things to be a part of them. And as you can see here, part of the digital media membership, there is Blindfish Media, which is the company that makes BHN and makes your podcast Locked Up. Locked Up might be what happens if Trump takes over this country. Locked Out is what happened then. Yeah, and so Locked Out, which is part of the Blindfish Media group, which I am the journalist and the reporter for, and presenter and broadcaster, is inside that that Venn diagram of the people who are allowed inside lockups, where the Treasury is not going to make distinctions about who or who is not a journalist. Yep. Okay. So what I did was I applied for Blindfish Media to send a reporter along to Lockup to then disseminate that information to the public. We were talking about doing a live stream on the day of, so 2 p.m. when embargoes come up. That gives us a chance to get in there yet. And this year, May the 12th, we get a response from Treasury. Kia ora, Pat, we are confirming your registration for the Budget 2025 embargo briefing under lockup conditions. Says all of those things. Then it says registrations, Blindfish Media attendee, Pat Brittenden. So they said yes to me. To which I replied to them, oh, just so you know, just checking, we applied for our Wellington-based reporter to come, not me personally. I assume that makes no difference, just checking.
To which the response was, apologies. Yes, I see we had just put your name down. Just let us know the name of the journalist when you have assigned the person, and then ask them to reply to the accepted rules. So we did. You are Blindfish Media, BHN's reporter, journalist.
Yep.
And we sent the email to you. You sent it to Treasury. You fulfilled all the criteria.
Correct.
And carbon copied us in. And a few days later, this is the response we get. It's a long email, but I'm going to read it all. It says this. Kia ora, Pat. We wanted to remember, they've already said yes to Blindfish Media and yes to our Wellington reporter. They've said that. They've already given that the thumbs up. Kia ora, Pat. We wanted to follow up on your registration interest for Budget 2025 restricted briefing. The purpose of Ministerial and Treasury restricted briefings is to provide advanced access to material under embargo for media and economic and financial analysts to accurately report to the public and markets. We accept registrations from journalists representing organisations who are registered with the Parliamentary Press Gallery or the New Zealand Media Council, which we are.
Correct.
We understand that you have provided the name of a Wellington-based reporter to represent Blindfish Media at the budget lockup. Could you please confirm that this is the same Craig Renney that is currently Policy Director and Economist for the New Zealand Council of Trade Unions? For your awareness, past lockup attendees have included representatives from organisations including peak bodies, professional bodies, unions, industry bodies, and industry information services, as well as advocacy groups, charities, and large corporates, among others. In line with the criteria used to assess registration, these organisations do not require advanced access to the information, and we'll be able to access it once the embargo is lifted on 2 p.m. on the day. So they're basically saying, we used to do this, we don't do this anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Accordingly, if it is the same individual as above, we regret to inform you that they would be declined from this year's budget lockup. While we carefully consider registrations from media commentators, we are unable to accept individuals. I just realized the whole time I wasn't showing it to you. Unable to represent those individuals whose primary role is to represent an organization that has not met our criteria. This is particularly relevant in cases where both individual and organization have been declined. If you would like to send an alternative representative from your organization, we will consider this decision further. It's an interesting way they finish it, because they've already accepted that we can have a reporter, but now they seem to be saying, no, we might, even though we've said yes, we might do it again. And I have just realized that I didn't include as a screen grab my response to them, which I probably should do. Let me just, I won't show this because I haven't taken like all the things out of this. So yeah. What I've said back to them on that is, we wanted to follow up on this. The purpose of that's theirs. Sorry. Sorry, I got the wrong. This is what happens when you don't prepare, when you're not professional enough to be a part of the lockup. This is what I've said. Craig Renney works for my media company, my media council member company, Blindfish Media, as both a reporter for BHN, our flagship news commentary show, and as a broadcaster in his own podcast that we produce. I have no connection to the work he does for the CTU or what the CTU puts him forward for. He works with me as a reporter and broadcaster, disseminating economic information to the New Zealand public. We are running a live BHN show at 2 p.m. on budget day. We will be using Craig as our reporter to disseminate budget information to our audience. His primary role for my business is as a reporter in economic issues. I trust that Treasury will reconsider the decision not to allow Craig into the lockup, as you now understand his vital role in reporting the budget content for the BHN audience at 2 p.m. once the embargo is lifted. That was sent last night. I have contacted Treasury as of time of recording, which is approaching 5 p.m. I have contacted Treasury, I think, 3 times today. We are yet to hear back. Craig.
Yep. So the key line there is, for me, is the bottom line in that response from the Treasury. So where they say, if you would like to send an alternative representative from your organization, please, we will consider this issue further.
Yeah.
That suggests that the lockup and the lockout here is personal. It's not just about the CTU. It's not just about Blindfish Media. It's actually saying, if you want to send somebody else other than Craig, we might let you in.
Which then takes us right back to the original email they sent you, where they say, when we use these external criteria, the Treasury therefore is not making subjective decisions about who is or is not a journalist. Yet in the response to me, they are saying you are not a journalist.
You can't have it both ways. You
Yeah.
can't say we accept applications from people who are members of the Media Council without question because that's externally verified, right? And then say, oh, everyone from that group except this person here.
So this is the thing. This is the thing now. They've moved. Now, I have to say Treasury, I guess, but is there being a knee placed on the neck from further up the chain? Whoever is making these decisions, these very recent decisions, in fact, only since this government has been in, whoever is making those decisions is now saying these third-party groups can't come. And now they're saying this accredited media source can't come because we don't accept their journalist. They are saying this government is saying, or Treasury, this government is saying that we are going to censor the information that we've already said. This is how we provide. We've jumped through your hoops. We've done that. And now you're saying, yeah, but not him. In fact, they've even said, Pat, you can come in. I was talking to Chewie about this last night, Craig. I think Chewie made a very good point to me after the show was finished. So I'm dyslexic, right? They're happy for me to come. They're happy for me to look at this million-page document and me to open it and for me to basically think I'm reading Latin. So they're happy for me to do that. But they're not happy for you to come. The person who would actually look at that Latin and be able to translate it perfectly into 2025 Kiwi English. Why would any group, why would any government or any Treasury want to send along the rodeo clown and be happy with that and not the person who actually can disseminate this to the public?
It's a great question, Pat. Is that if you want to encourage public debate, if you want to encourage transparency, if you want to encourage actually accurate reporting of what's inside the budget, right? Then you need to allow people who are able to understand it to be able to access that documentation in a way that allows that to be part of the media conversation when the documents are released publicly.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're essentially saying, nope, we're going to allow any media organization that is accredited except you, and you aren't allowed in, and you aren't allowed in twice. You aren't allowed in as the CTU because we're going to stop third-party organizations from accessing it. But then if you, as a reporter and journalist, then apply through an accredited organization, we're going to say, no, you're not a reporter. You can have any flavor of reporter you like, as long as it isn't this flavor of reporter. And that's wild. We're into a different place where you're saying, hang on a second, we're now picking and choosing the reporters in particular places. It's a very Trumpian world when you're accessing that. And that's a very different thing to just barring every non-government organization.
Craig, I've got a personal question for you. I was going to ask you, what if you gave Nikki some flowers, but I won't say that. Do you think Treasury wants you in the lockup?
I honestly don't know, is the honest answer. The OIA release last time round certainly seemed to suggest that the Treasury had a lot of sympathy and couldn't find a reason under the current embargo rules to stop me from attending. And there certainly seemed to be a degree of sympathy for keeping me in the lockup in that OIA release. I honestly don't know now. We had the CTU held a meeting with the Treasury Secretary, and we talked about these issues. We had a very pleasant conversation. I'm not going to go into the details of that because that was a private meeting.
Yep.
But at no point in time has anyone from the Treasury at any point in time signaled to me that the Treasury does not wish me to be in there. But all of that to one side for just a second. There's what worries me is you, Pat, have gone through all the hoops necessary in order to do what is needed. We have gone through all the hoops necessary in order to get. I'm not a security risk, right? I'm not, I'm not going to suddenly leap with. I've been to lots of these lockups before. I'm not going to try and rush for the door with a bunch of papers, right, or try and plaster them on the windows so people can see, what's going on, right? I'm a professional. This is my job, right? This can only be about access to information, right?
I was going to say we had John Minto on last night, and he made the point. I'm paraphrasing, but pretty close to the quote is that to be a democracy, everybody needs to participate. And how's this any different?
Yep. Well, the purpose of holding a lockup is to give people access to the information, and that doesn't work if you're only giving the people that you like access to that information. And it certainly doesn't help, at least with the perception of transparency, that you not only block a whole range of non-government organizations from accessing it, but then you go a step further and you start blocking some accredited media outlets from accessing that sort of activity, from accessing this information.
I was talking to someone today, and the point they made, again, it was a private conversation, but the point they made was this government is so very keen to get their narrative and messaging out and off the ground that anyone who might do due diligence like yourself in there to get out at 2:00 and paint a different narrative might actually be the reason they don't want it, because they're not doing well in their internal polling, and they do not want. Maybe they know there's a narrative that's going to come in, but it's like lies gets around the world before truth gets its pants on. Maybe they're just keen as if they can get the headlines out that they want for the first 3, 4, 5 hours, then anything else that's found by someone who's not in there before 2:00, they may go to page 3 rather than page 1. That feels like quite a logical result to me.
And what the media often do in the lockups themselves is they will pull analysts to one side, put them on camera, and then say, "What do you say?" And that they cut that video in order to then have it all ready to go the millisecond the lockup embargo is released, so that they can then put different voices on the conversation. If you're restricting those different voices, then you're restricting essentially the kinds of messages that then get released to the public.
Craig, this is a story we all obviously continue to keep an eye on, which is because it's kind of our story now. But as I do a refresh on my emails at 5:01 p.m. on the Wednesday, there is no response yet. It's approaching 24 hours. In fact, I think it is probably 24 hours. If anything happens between now and 9:00, we'll tell the team tonight. But for that, won't we leave it at that for today? We have all our cards on the table. We are not a vindictive group here. We are not about embarrassing anybody. We just want the access that we are entitled to. Mr. Luxon, you know about that word. We want the access that we're entitled to because we jumped through your hoops. Or I want you to point to the reason, Section 5, Subset 4, Part D, that eliminates this accredited company sending along the journalist of its choice to report back and disseminate the information to the public. Show us that, and I will back down and I will apologize. But until we see that, Craig, we'll just stay in touch.
You can point out any part of any activity of BHN which has previously broken an embargo, previously done something that would make us an information risk at that point in time. That, to my mind, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't anything. So as a consequence, and as a consequence,
best of my knowledge as well, Craig. Best of my knowledge.
For the purposes of the lawyers in the room, to the best of my knowledge, that is absolutely the case. And very key. Again, if someone wants to say, "Do you know what, mea culpa, we've made a mistake, let's fix it," sensational. I'll be the first person on Twitter saying, "Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you then." End of conversation.
Yeah, very good. All right, Craig. You have a good night tonight. Enjoy your red carpeting, whatever it is that you're doing. And I'm sure we'll be talking in the next 24 hours. For other people who aren't aware of this yet, Craig's podcast will be out on Friday morning this week, not Thursday morning. I don't know if you noticed, Craig, but all the imaging around this conversation we had was locked out to start off with. So we did like a little subtle advert for it as well. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning, and thanks for your time tonight. And media, feel free to call. You've got the information now.
Thank you.
So there you go, Chewie. You have now received all the info. we do have a little update as well. But would you like to share anything before we grab that update on what because you hadn't heard that whole story, now you've heard it and seen it?
What a perfectly sprung trap by BHN. Artfully compiled and exquisitely deployed.
But hang on, if it was a trap, us talking about it for the last 6 months wouldn't it be very smart, would it?
Shush! No, we did it in secret. Only a select few 100 people knew what we were doing. So
okay, let's do this because as that was on, I got a little special message from a Christmas elf who said, "I have an update." So let's welcome to the show, Mr. Craig Renney. Craig, good evening to you, sir. And you turn your mic on and then talk to us.
Hello, evening, gents. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing well, mate.
Good.
It didn't expect to hear from you tonight. That's the first Chewie's heard of it. Chewie, do you want to comment on or ask Craig anything? Or
I'm just blown away that it's still sort of scrambling to no, we're not picking on Craig. It's not because it's Craig. Okay, so you let us send someone. Yeah, no, absolutely, cool. It's Craig. Oh, suddenly no, can't let Craig in the room. Sorry, no boys allowed. It must be infuriating.
Maybe it's a ginger thing. Is it a ginger thing, Craig? Maybe they'd say no to you as well.
The update that I have tonight, gents, is going to make you more annoyed, Chewie. As I understand it, every other organisation, or every organisation I've talked to tonight, including the Taxpayers Union and other organisations, have now been allowed back in to the lockup.
Oh, what? TPU was their little fig leaf that it wasn't a personal vendetta.
However, the CTU has received, as of about 5 minutes ago when I checked my emails, we have received no such notification ourselves. I have received that information from a range of actors, including not-for-profit organisations, charities, for-profit organisations. Tonight, they have been sent an email from the Treasury that says, due to widespread feedback received by the Treasury, the Minister of Finance has decided to allow a wider range of actors into the lockup. Fine, great, but I personally, it may well be sat with somebody else in the CTU's email tonight. In which case, if it is, fair play, but I would have expected to have been told as the person named from the CTU to turn up. But as of tonight, we are still locked out, but everybody else is back in.
I mean, Occam's razor. There must be an invite for the CTU. There must be. I think we've pointed it out pretty clearly that the reason that all those other groups were locked out was because they needed to find an excuse to lock you out, and then they had to get them all back in the same thing. So I just don't see how. I'll be dumbfounded if you haven't been put back in. I mean, that would be like the definition of Trumpian. Sorry, you can't come into the White House anymore because you're not calling it the Gulf of America. It would be that level Trumpian.
It would be, but the point I just want to make, which is that in the interview that we held earlier today, the justification was that peak bodies, other actors, no longer needed access to that information, which is why we've pulled that. That's why they said I wasn't allowed in as a BHN reporter, because they said I represented a body that was prevented from having access to that information. Now,
so why do they need it now? I didn't need
those organizations are allowed in. So either I'm being prevented as a CTU person, as a personal thing, but why am I now not allowed in as a BHN reporter? Because the same people who have access to that information, now BHN doesn't have access to that information.
Isn't it interesting that after I sent that email 24 hours ago that basically said, no, it's nothing to do with CTU. Craig's a journalist for us. As you have described, you can't pick and choose who is a journalist. he covers all these accreditations through the company that makes his podcast and who he does work for. So isn't it funny how like the day after that, at the end of the day after a whole bunch of meetings, all of a sudden the rules are changed again?
Because the people I was at an event tonight for Andrew Little for the mayoral campaign for Wellington, and people came up to me in the middle of the night saying, "Oh, we've just been allowed back into the lockup. Have you been allowed into the lockup?"
Well, Craig. Now, Craig, we will be talking tomorrow. When are we supposed to be recording your podcast? Because we may not be able to. We'll figure it out tomorrow.
It'll be around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
That works for me. Maybe 2. All right, good. So we'll do that podcast tomorrow. So I'm sure if people want to know more, Friday morning, Locked Out with Craig Renney will be coming up, and then we'll find out.
Yeah, we will fill you in with all the details. But as of tonight, everyone else is allowed back in, including New Zealand Initiative, Taxpayers Union, range of other actors. However, CTU is still locked out, as is BHN, I imagine, because you haven't received a permission slip.
But we got told we're in, and then we got told that our Wellington reporter is in, and then we told them how our Wellington reporter was going to be, and then they said, no, he can't be the reporter, but you can send someone else. So can you grow a beard or something in the next 6 days?
Well, the challenge is, as I say, in the email that you received, the justification was because he represented a body that didn't need access to that information. But now all those other actors now have access to that information. And as a consequence, am I either not allowed in as a trade union representative, or am I not allowed in as a journalist? And if so, why?
I do, I'll be blunt. I do feel a bit bad for Treasury, because I don't think this is anything. My opinion is this is nothing to do with Treasury, and they're put in the situation because it's never happened before. Why would they? And it's never happened before, and they've said tonight, well, the Minister of Finance decided to broaden it. Now that implies that the Minister of Finance decided, to shorten it as well. So, all right, Craig, thank you very much, sir. We'll text tomorrow morning, and we will catch you. There's your latest update from Craig Renney. All the best.
Thank you.
Cheers, Craig.
And that's it for us, team. I'll get some chats that are in. That's the update. Pat, you need to lawyer up on this. No, speaking of Patreon, no. We'll see what happens. Because I mean, like, honestly, I would now be surprised if CTU hadn't been told they can be there. It is an example of the Streisand effect like you've never seen. If Craig had turned up and done his normal stuff, that wouldn't have created any waves. If and when he turns up now, every media outlet in the country will want to get his take, because why is your take so dangerous, Craig? Why did they try? We better talk to you then. You know what I mean? It's the Streisand effect to the max. All right.
Wow.
Do you want to say anything else? You've just got the whole kind of thing in one lot. You've got the whole story.
No, I'm just blown away. Like I was like, oh, this will be really interesting. It was interesting when CTU was declined for it and all of that sort of thing, and when they said, oh look, there's a bunch of other groups we're excluding, part of me went, oh, that's just to cover the fact that it's a personal vendetta against Craig, and I was like, that's a little bit much, surely it's not that. And I took some solace in the fact that the TPU wasn't allowed in, so silver linings and all that. And then our little attempt here, again, CTU declined. Then we were approved, and then they found out who it was, and then they didn't like it. Okay, cool. But then this absolute cherry on top is like, oh yeah, no, everyone's allowed back in yet. But maybe not Craig again. Maybe not. Is what a shit show. What a shambles. It's hard to see it as not being personal at this point.
As we speak, I've just made that interview live on YouTube. So now it's live on YouTube if you guys want to share it around. Okay, just get some of these chats and then we'll go out for the night. A printer repair fund. It's a printer broken, Justin? It's the computer that was playing up, but there you go. Very good. We appreciate that. Wombing says, great response, Pat Reed reporter Craig Renney. Arvid says, Nikki's flower fund. I think she needs a hug. Hadron Collider, I nearly said hard on again. Knowledge is power. Nicola doesn't want Craig or the CTU to have any of either. It's really not, I mean, It's kind of really not that, though, because let's be honest, if they did get it at 2 o'clock, they'd still come to the same conclusions. They'd just come to them by 5 o'clock. So the only thing it can be is they want to get out the first narrative and hope that grabs all the headlines. And then when Craig at 2 o'clock, if that was the case, did his analysis, you hope that goes to page 6, or that's not the one featured on One News, because, you know, One News doesn't have enough time now at 5 o'clock to get the new perspective in there, or whatever it is. So, you know, because the information is going to be there for them, just not early access if they're going to stick that way. Reporter Craig Renney doing a great journalism. Chewie, you're rubbing off on people. How does it feel to be the most feared man of Parliament? I said that to him today when he called me. I went, the most dangerous man in New Zealand. How are you today? 007, Craig Renney. 007 Renney. Craig Renney, licensed to report. I like Richard's comment. Craig has an economics degree and is acting as a journalist. Nicola has a journalism degree and is acting as bizarre.
Very good.
JG says litigation fund. Yeah. I mean, honestly, maybe I will be surprised if CTU aren't in there now, because it could. The government will never want to admit, Nikki Noboats will never want to admit that it's personal. And if it was only the CTU, literally only the CTU, then it's personal and there's no way to defend it. So I imagine they will probably be there tomorrow. So you'll have to tune in, find out. Go follow Craig he's on Blue Sky and on Twitter. Now, the other thing before we go, Chewie, is because we've had issues with the system today, the outro music is just going to play by itself. There's not going to be any fading up and fading down. It's like the intro music. I've put it in the system to make sure it works. So we'll just say good night.
God. I thought you were going to say that we're going to do it a cappella.
Yes.
So I mean, that's good news, to be honest.
Chewie is going to stay and sing. So we're saying goodbye now, Chewie. We're not coming back during the actual music. Is there anything else to wrap up before we head off?
Yeah, nothing specific. Nothing specific. Just general feelings of rebellion, just simmering. Just do
my Pilates.
Good.
All right, team. We'll catch you tomorrow night. I'm going to fire some Māori Party people a text tomorrow. We'll see if we can grab someone. Who knows? Maybe we'll have Craig back. Maybe the Treasury one. What, Nicola Willis? Why don't you come talk to us tomorrow night? We'd love to have a catch up with you, see how things are going. But until then, stay safe, everyone. Have a good old time. We're going to have a gay old time. Isn't that what the Flintstones used to say? Have a gay old time. Wilma. Yep. Meant something different back then, apparently. All right, team. All the best. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. I like that. Ciao. See you later. Hooroo.
See you, fam.